And this is for an experience I'm in for my minor, actually. I'm in the forestry discipline. My capstone project for that was basically doing a restoration project in a wetland. So that's where my interest in wetlands comes from. And I am a big nerd about history and mythology and stuff like that, so that's where the monsters come in. About the program itself, I did promise monsters, and there will be monsters. Okay, I'm not lying. But the program is also about perspectives and our cultural ideas. Okay, so like the things that we think about as a large group of people. So I have a question for you right away. I know there's going to be deer every 30 seconds.
There's a deer. Not in a group.
I know, there probably is in a group. You just got to look harder. So I do have a question. Just about some words. So what do you immediately think when I say the word swamp? What was that? Hydra? Okay, that's a.
I also nerd about mythology and hydrogen stories.
There you go, a wetland monster that we will not talk about. That's a good example. What do you got? A wetland frog. Okay, so we got some wildlife. Anything else for swamp? Witch.
Stinky.
Stinky. Okay, there's a cultural idea. We've got witch. Another good example. What about the word bog? Same sort of idea, monsters, yeah. Okay. Now what about a word like marsh or wetlands?
Cranberries.
Cranberries. That's a good example. Biodiversity and keto species. Wow. Another kind of nerd. Yeah.
My whole family is nerds.
Yeah.
Yikes! I like it.
Well, you've made my point though. Even something as simple as language, bog versus marsh, can change how we think about a subject. I mean, even swamp and bog are my two big examples. At work, if you got a bunch of work, you're swamped. If there's a bunch of people, I don't know, wasting your time, you're bogged down. So the language kind of creeps in and changes how we think about things. Something more complex, like mythological history or monster stories, also do the same thing. They create a societal stigma or a big group idea and kind of change how we think about the resource itself. So during the walk today, we're going to learn about how monsters, mythology, and superstition have shaped our cultural ideas about wetland and how those ideas have influenced wetlands going into decline, unfortunately. Before we leave, I do have a project that you can choose to work on, especially the younger people, but anyone's free to take it. So we got clipboards and these little sheets I've worked up where along the way, as we learn about some monsters, you can draw your own wetland monster inspired by those. So you're welcome to come over here, take a sheet, some colors. These, I know it's raining. I do have plastic bags for while we're walking. You can shove that in there, make sure it doesn't get too wet. So for a couple reminders while people are getting their boards ready, there are bathrooms inside that I would probably go to like as we start walking. You're free to just leave the group. I won't be offended. There's some there, some inside the center. That's also where you can get warm if you need to do so. We are going to be out for like an hour, so you have to be tough. Or we can leave. It's up to you. And while my prayers have been answered and all the snow and ice has melted off the trails we're going on, they are wet. So keep your footing. We're going to walk fairly slowly, make sure everyone's keeping up and no one's falling down. That's about it. All right. So if everyone's got their things together, we can gather up for just one more moment. I have something for you to think about while we walk, okay? So before we get into our myths, this ever have to wait just a minute for them, we have to establish a little base of wetland knowledge, okay? Make sure we're all in the same place. Seems like we've got some nerds in the house that might know a little bit more, but we gotta. Okay, well, I don't know. Maybe bookworms aren't as knowledgeable on wetlands, so we gotta make sure everyone's in the same place. So, while we walk to the first stop, I want you to think about, maybe talk with your family or the people next to you. What makes wetlands special? What makes them different from other? We're going to share in a little bit, so you got to think while we're walking. And if you don't know anything about wetlands, what makes Schmeeckle special to you? Because a lot of it is wetland after all. Okay. Schmeeckle is where we are right now. And the whole natural area around. All right. Follow me.
I remember that one.
Okay, I'm going to commit a Schmeeckle sin by stepping off the boardwalk here. But I'm just making sure everyone has an opportunity to gather around here and give everyone the room. So you should not do this, by the way.
Danny, come over this way so people can fit in. You're taller than the other kids, so you can be in the back.
So, what were the ideas that we had? What makes wetlands special?
So, I think it's special because some wetlands used to be forests and some wetlands are still forests.
Okay, that's very true. Most people think wetlands are just big open areas of grass, but we have a lot of forested wetlands in Wisconsin. Yeah?
And the plant foliage is a lot things can't grow other places with less water, and a lot of plants that don't grow in wetlands will immediately die in wetlands.
It's very true. So she made two great points. We have some unique wildlife, and we also have some very unique plants. So how we talk about plants that live in wetlands, at least in my profession, is that they like wet feet. Of course, they don't actually have feet, but most plants can't grow with wet root systems, but these guys can. These are a bunch of alders. We're not going to talk about plants. We don't have the time. But yeah, this is an example of a common area in Wisconsin, an alder swamp. Any other ideas? We got plants, animals.
Filter groundwater.
Yeah. Well, I guess just on a more simple note, water, right? It's in the name, wetland. That's like the most important thing that we got. Water shapes the characteristics of everything else that lives in this area. So, as we mentioned, the plants, they are especially good at growing with wet soil. And there are some rules for wetlands. So, basically, they have to have water at or near the surface of the soil most or all of the year, and it has to include the growing season, so when these guys have leaves. So I'm looking for one more thing. Let's see if someone can help me out. Something that makes wetlands unique. Yeah. Frogs. Okay, so that's another good example of some animals.
Plants filter water, as in, like, they help with filtering the nutrients.
Well, the thing that I'm thinking of does help filter water and nutrients and stuff. Yeah.
Rain isn't
It's true. They do help with flooding and stuff. Do you have a
They
different?
help filter pollution from the.
It's true.
From getting into the groundwater.
We're getting ahead of me a little bit to the human values, the things that we like. No, you're totally good. That's a valid point. Do you have an idea? It's true. They provide a place for monsters to live. Very true. No, but what I'm thinking of is the soil. Okay, it's something that we forget about a lot. But because of the presence of water, our wetland soils are super different from any other ones that we find. So I have a little example of one. A couple times today, I'm gonna need to grab some props from under the boardwalk, and I didn't really have time this morning, so I enlisted the help of my little troll friend. So he's been running around under the boardwalks and grabbing stuff for me. So I have some soil to show you, but he's kind of stubborn sometimes. Come on, give it. Okay. Jeez. Right. Okay. So this is some wetland soil that he collected for me. I appreciate it. I want you to check it out, see how it's different. Check out the color. In fact, I encourage you to smell it. It smells really interesting. We're not gonna eat it or anything. That's the only rule I've got. Yeah, what makes it different is
He's really quick.
he's really quick. Yeah, he's already gone. Must have run off. So, what makes these soils different is the presence of water, as I said. So, the things that live in the soil, which we call microbes, that help break down all the dead stuff, they need oxygen too. And they, just like us, they can't breathe too well underwater. So when they're breaking down stuff, there's a different process. There's a different process which is called anaerobic decomposition. Big words, but it just means breaking dead things down without oxygen. So that helps something we call organic matter, which are like nutrients for plants, build up in the soil, and it changes the color of such things. Oh, see that?
What legend we're doing.
What is that?
It's a will-o'-the-wisp.
That's a great idea. It is a will-o'-the-wisp. It's also called a jack-o'-lantern, strangely enough. That's where that myth came from.
Oh, let him.
In America, we call them spook lights, which is a very American name. I didn't know that. I didn't know that we had them there. I hope it doesn't sneak up on me. But the real danger of will-o'-the-wisps is that they lure you away into the swamp to be lost forever. So as long as we stay as a group, we don't follow it. It should be okay. So yeah, stick close to your adults here. So just a little bit about it. It came from a bunch of myths from the United Kingdom, and a little bit about the name. A wisp, in some old terms, is the name for a bundle of sticks that they would use as a torch. So, Will of the Wisp, or Jack of the Lantern, is the name of a character from hundreds of different stories, where basically someone lived a really terrible life. And when they died, they got sent back to Earth as a spirit who was cursed to wander the wetlands for eternity. And all they had was a lantern or a torch. So, being a terrible little thing, they turn them on in the dead of night and attract lost travelers to their watery doom.
Oh.
Yeah. So something interesting about this, we just talked about soil. We have a scientific explanation for why people have seen will-o'-the-wisps, because they're real. They pop up, fire in the swamp. You have an idea for why that happens?
I know. There's many causes, but I know one of the main causes is that in wetlands there's sometimes like methane gases that form because of the decomposition. And sometimes they go up, and sometimes, I can't remember what, but sometimes they spark, and then it's like a small miniature like flame for a moment.
That's perfect, yes. That's exactly what happens. So what I mentioned, that anaerobic decomposition, so breaking down dead stuff without oxygen, those microbes make methane gas, and it builds up in the wetland until it pops out in little bubbles. And there's a really complicated thing with chemical reactions and acid and stuff. But basically when it pops up and it reacts with oxygen, it makes a little burst of flame. And if you saw it off in the woods, you might go, oh, there's someone that might know where they're going. I'll follow them. And then get lost. Yes. So coming back a little bit to what she was talking about earlier, and then I promise we'll get moving. Why do you think wetlands might be valuable to us? What do they help us with?
Very good.
Any? Yeah, in the back.
Water management.
Yeah. So as you can see, we've had a bunch of melt of the snow and ice, and it's raining. But we're not having a huge flood, partly because of the soil here. it acts like a sponge, collects things, and it can very slowly flow onto a stream, and it's not making some huge flood event. That's a great idea. That's the big one. And then something we mentioned earlier was cranberries. So we're a huge cranberry state, if you didn't know that. So those grow in wetlands, mostly controlled wetlands, but same sort of deal. And then as we said earlier, they also do grow trees, so they're a big thing for the logging industry. One last thing, and it's about Schmeeckle itself. So something I was curious about when I started seeing wetlands here is that we're in a region of Wisconsin that's all sandy soil, which water just flies right through it. So how do we have a wetland in the middle of sandy Wisconsin? The glaciers or something? It's normally a good answer for soil-related things, but actually no, we weren't glaciated right here. It was basically the stopping point. Yeah.
The decomposition of plants creates new soil.
So that is true. We have built up a kind of a holding layer here, but I'm just going to cut to the chase because it's a hard answer. So in the bounds of Schmeeckle, we actually have really high bedrock, which acts like a big bathtub. So even if there is sandy soil, there's just nowhere it can go. So we have way higher water here than we do in most of our surroundings. I have a bunch of nerdy information about what that structure is called and everything, but it's cold, so we're gonna move on. You can ask me about it later if you want. That being said, we do have a couple-minute drawing break. If you'd like to start with your monster, feel free to have it be inspired a little bit by the will-o-wisp. We're just about to move on. We're going to discover some more myths and superstitious uses of wetlands. But again, I want you to consider something while we're on the way, okay? So, knowing what we know so far about wetlands, and kind of thinking of, historically, people didn't know quite as much about them. They just were able to observe things. Why might you think wetlands are dangerous, okay, or at least to be avoided? Okay, think about that. Feel free to talk with your neighbor while we walk. And I'll hop back up here. Some of my colleagues at UW Stevens Point in the fire crew. So part of wetland ecology is also having some fire on the landscape. It's a good way to get rid of some bad plants that kind of mess with the ecosystem. And here we kind of have a huge cattail marsh, which can be problematic. Cattails are not bad in themselves, but they tend to take over. And then you gotta help some other plants grow up in their place. Okay. We're gonna keep moving here. I'm sure you're wondering why I asked you, why wetlands might be dangerous. And the reason is, there has to be a reason all these myths were created, right? Because of course monsters are not actually real. They're not just going to come walking out of the swamp. Whoa! Guys, it's the Schmeeckle Shambler. I hear that it attacks students that walk off the boardwalk. I'm doomed. Everyone, what? Oh, no, wait, guys, it's not. She must have fallen in the wetland. We're all good. Oh, okay. Well, speaking of falling in the wetland, what did you come up with? Why are wetlands dangerous? Why might they be considered dangerous? Yeah. Bog holes? What's that? Can you expand on that?
I don't know if it's true, but basically the idea is that the roots are the only thing that is from the ground that can start infecting.
Sure. It can be extremely hard to tell what you're walking on. And that brings me to our next legend. So, you've probably seen something like this in your life. which is just a big pond of duckweed or algae. Right? That's where this next legend comes from. When you can't find your footing, and especially if you're a little kid or an old person that can't see too well, you might walk right onto that thinking that it's solid ground. And that's where Jenny Greenteeth gets ya.
Yes.
I have an image here of Jenny Greenteeth. She's quite frightening.
Oh my. Green little more than this.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what that is.
You've seen her before? So, she is described as an old hag-like woman with long hair of green algae and especially long arms that she uses to grab children, walk too close to the water, and drag them in. And actually, she does so especially with children who don't brush their teeth very well. So this myth originated in the west of England, and it's actually still around. They might not believe in the myth itself anymore, but the duckweed, the algae that I just showed you, Jenny Greenteeth is an alternate name for duckweed in the west of England because you know they see it and they think of the legend that their grandparents might have told them way back in the day. So, we do have another piece of drawing time. If you'd like to expand on your drawing, maybe add a Jenny Greenteeth to it. All right, come back together here. I think we only got one person working. It's okay. No, it's all good. So, beyond just the victims of Jenny Greenteeth, there are some really interesting bodies that we've found in wetlands. So we're kind of shifting over to the superstitious uses of wetlands. So these are found in northern Europe where we have a bunch of wetlands, and they're collectively known as bog bodies. You might have heard a little bit about them. They were popular a few years ago. So most come from the Iron Age, which is 500 BC to 100 AD. The oldest is a guy named Cashel-man, because they just name them after where they find them. And he's dated to around 2000 BC, which is 700 years older than King Tut. Pretty crazy. But the most famous one, getting stuck together, is Tulland Man. I have an image of him here, which we're gonna hand around. Ada, if you want to take that. I have two of them. He was found in Denmark. And they kind of offer, and just so you know, this is a dead person if you don't want to look at it, but it's not very gruesome. It just kind of looks like an old man. So this presents a mystery to me. Why were these people killed? So we know that the people in this time period understood that things would get preserved in the bogs because we found a bunch of like food that they have left in there and forgot about, and it's been there. Yes, bog butter, which apparently is still edible, but we're not eating it. So based on what we've talked about, why do you think a bog might be a good place to preserve food or a dead person?
So I think when stuff gets wet, if something stays wet, it won't mold. If something stays dry, it won't mold when it gets wet and dry.
Yeah, so it's a part of it. I mean, what we discussed earlier about the microbes in the soil not having very much oxygen, so they can't really do their job very well, and they don't break it down, and then essentially the person just gets mummified. So we have an interesting window into the past there. I do also have a full body photo here, if you're interested. It's a little bit grosser. Still not gruesome, but it is a dead person. So just one. So
Wow.
use discretion whether you want to do it or not. You still gonna want to have these to check out. It's gonna come around to you. Okay. All right, well, keep passing it down the line. Everyone's got to see it, if they want to. Okay, so, like I said, it's an interesting window into the history of wetland use, but it does present some mysteries. Why were they killed? The leading theory revolves around an ancient goddess of the earth known as Nerthus. And basically they were sacrificing these people to ensure a good harvest. And the reason we think this is very interesting. Archaeologists have found a silver cauldron with Nerthus on it. She's at the center, and she has kind of these strange rope ties around her head, her neck, and her arms. So looking at the image, why do you think that relates it to Tullenman? I know only a couple of you have it. But
Just me.
yeah, they gotta stay in circulation.
Similar bindings.
Yeah, exactly. So these people were bound when they were killed, and Tullenman still has a rope around his neck. So it kind of relates to the imagery of Nerthus. And we know it was for a good harvest because based on what he had in his stomach, he was killed like right about now. This time of year.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was like before things are gonna start growing. Yeah, well that's okay. So I know this is kind of a gruesome subject, but I think it's a really interesting view into how people way in the past thought about wetlands, and clearly most of them consider them a holy or magical place where they could commune with their gods. Okay, we're gonna keep moving. While we're walking, I want you to put yourself a little bit further forward in time, not in 2000 BC. And I want you to consider yourself one of the first European settlers to get here in Wisconsin. Okay? And considering what you know, you've just come from a place where you're hearing all about these ancient myths and monsters. What might you want to do with your local wetland? Or what does it mean to you? Okay? So I'll take back the pictures, and we're gonna get a move on. So, I've asked you to kind of think of yourself as an early settler here. There's no boardwalk, there's no streets, no century world. What do you think would be a good use of this area? We're looking at this big open expanse, really nice soil.
Could we turn it into farmland?
Turn it into farmland? That's a good idea. I think you thought pretty much what everyone that settled here thought. So in the mid 1800s, this area was logged. Doesn't look like it now, but these have all grown back since then. And after it was logged, the area was all clear and free to use for people that were looking to make farms. But first, you have to drain a wetland before you can use it for a farm. Normally that's done using a kind of a ditch system, but here, if you've ever been to Moses Creek wetland, which is like the big one, basically they channelized that. They made all the little meandering streams into one big stream and made it flow down to the Wisconsin River to drain out that area. And knowing what we know about what wetlands do for us, what problems do you think they ran into? I'm gonna ask someone else. The only one answering. Any ideas? No?
Flooding?
You say sledding? Flooding. Oh, flooding. Yes, exactly. They had a number of flooding events because that sponge of the wetland was no longer there to keep everything in check, and the water just ran down right past downtown Stevens Point, and a number of times it had some big flooding problems. So after that period, they kind of found that the soil wasn't great for agriculture. They did use this as grazing land for cattle, but after a while in the mid 1950s and 60s, it was abandoned and it kind of became what it is now. So the other way that wetlands are lost to us is through building things, basically, because it's difficult to build on wet, mucky soil, so they kind of have to be drained in order for us to use them for things. So I mean, example is this boardwalk, even the Schmeeckle Visitor Center, and then the big one is behind those trees there. Had to be filled before Century was built, so kind of unfortunate. The final myth we're going to talk about is related to building on wetlands, and it's kind of a strange one. I'm betting that this one you will not have heard of, but you've been proving me wrong all day. See if I can unstick these wet things from each other. So this creature is known as vodyanoi in Russia, but it also goes by vodnik in kind of Central Europe and Wassermann in German, which just literally means waterman. It's very creative. Here is an image of him that can get passed around. He is an ill-tempered water spirit who kind of came from some old-fashioned worship, who is said to destroy water structures like dams, water mills, boardwalks when he is not appeased. So as you can see, he's said to look like kind of a naked old man with frog features. Just the upper half, don't worry about it. But some legends say he can shapeshift. But as I said, you have to appease him, and appeasing him requires some sort of sacrifice. So this is, way back in the day, they would sacrifice animals to him when they were building a new water mill. And there's also some more strange things. Fishermen used to pour some oil, which was valuable back then, into the water to ensure a good catch. And there's a really strange tradition where beekeepers started sacrificing to him. I don't really understand the connection, but it happened. So they would kind of, the first swarm of their hive, they would wrap up in a burlap sack and give to the water. So later on, once people didn't want to get rid of their bees anymore, they started giving away honeycombs, which is on the test. So remember that. Honeycomb. Okay. So I have one last thing before our final drawing break. Just kind of a summary of how wetlands have been treated in Wisconsin. As kind of an unfortunate history. So in the early days, our first wetland survey, our first land survey was done in the 1830s. Those guys estimated we have about 5 million acres of wetland, but through some more recent data, we looked at kind of the soil throughout the state. We've estimated 10 million acres. But by a more modern period, the last wetland survey done by the government was in 1985. Obviously, there's not a lot of money in this this research, but they saw that we had 4.7 million acres. So if our original estimates are correct, we've lost over half of them in the state, and that's because of agriculture and building, like we mentioned. So I think Vodyanoi would be very upset with us, if I had to guess. I invite you to finish up your drawings if you still have a little bit left. I understand if you don't want to do that. You're getting wet and cold. If we don't want to, I can just move on. That's cool. Before we finish up our program here, I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to get kind of nervous talking about all these wetland monsters. And so before we start walking back on this boardwalk, I think I want to appease Vodyanoi.
Mm.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
You're gonna sacrifice.
All right. So I've asked my little troll friend to come here. Okay. He's a little nice this time. To gather us a little sample of some wetland water. We can't sacrifice animals on Schmeeckle property. And I also don't want to get rid of any tasty honeycombs, but I do have some beeswax.
Oh.
So, on your way by here, you can dip your beeswax. Just think what you might want to ask Vodyanoi for. Safe passage back to our final stop. If you're a fisherman, you could ask for a good catch. If you have bees, you could ask for a wonderful harvest. It's up to you. So I have 3 pieces. We can kind of disperse them throughout, but make sure everyone that wants to gets a chance. Just water. Nothing interesting in there. Do you want to go first? All right. So you can dip that and ask for Vodjanoi's blessing as we continue on. I have more pieces, so come on, make a line. We're gonna start heading back. Make sure everyone gets a chance to do it if they want to. So as you can see with our historical discussion here, myths and monsters are not the only reason that we've lost a lot of our wetlands in the state. They're clearly very valuable for agriculture and that sort of thing. But they do play a major part in shaping our perspective around this resource, and I think they're part of a major reason why we don't value them as much as we should. So as we walk back, I want you to think to yourself, talk with a partner, how your perspective, your ideas about wetlands might have changed on this walk. And if they haven't, if you already liked wetlands, that's awesome. But still, share with a partner what you love about wetlands, maybe, if your perspective has not changed. I'll take back the beeswax. If someone wants to hold it and smell it, you're certainly welcome to. It smells good.
That smells like swamp water now.
It probably does smell good. All right, let's follow me back. Home stretch, everybody. All right, well, just briefly, I see we lost some people. Did you talk about perspectives on the way back, or are you just shivering? Okay. Well, do you want to raise your hand if you have some changed ideas about wetlands? You don't have to say anything. Just raise your hand if you think so. Okay, that's good enough. And does anyone want to share their drawing? I don't know how many we finished. I know I got kind of wet. No? What do you got?
I mean, try to get a little of everything. We got the bridge troll, we got some will-o-the-wisp, got the green teeth lady, and a little Vodyanoi. Frogman at the bottom.
Oh wow, that's really good.
They got a little washed out, but
That's a good Vodyanoi.
they should be used to it.
Yeah.
Are they left?
Yeah, I like being wet. Any other drawings want to share? No? Okay. Do you want to share any of your drawings? I know you were working all the time. Could be a wetland monster.
But wow, that looks pretty cool. I mean, I'm seeing that from here.
Just in the back for wine. Nice.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Nice drawing.
Yeah. I like the sharks. That's a new weapon.
I'm inspired.
All right. Well, I'm glad that we've had some changed perspectives. I appreciate everyone's drawings and hanging with us through the weather that we're experiencing. After leaving here, I really urge you to get out in what we still have of wetlands in Wisconsin. Maybe on a nicer day than this. There's some really beautiful places, basically all over the state. I would also love if you would share those experiences and what you experienced here with your friends and family, see if you can change their ideas about wetlands. And if you enjoyed this program, as Chris said, you'll probably enjoy some other ones. There's a whole bunch. There's signs inside, so feel free to go outside, warm up, check out some other ones you want to check out. and yeah, support my classmates. So yeah, thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you.